Hey, how's everybody doing? Doing all right? Thank you for hosting me in Greenville. This talk is for technologists who want to be business leaders. So you're interested in a startup, you're interested in maybe being a corporate business leader. If you're not, that's fine. I hope that you get out of this talk some expectations that you might have for good business leaders. And it's okay to have expectations for your leaders, right? So I want you to recognize what good looks like here, whether you want to be a business leader or not. And my main argument is that we've all been programmed. I'm a dad, I love a dad joke. I didn't mean for this to be a dad pun today, but it works, yeah? So we've been programmed. We've been conditioned to accept, to put our faith in, to teach our children, to try to mold ourselves to a model of leadership that my grandpa used in the 40s and 50s. And it's a model of leadership that not only will run businesses into the ground, it misses this point that businesses exist to serve humanity and not the other way around. And that is very, very much core to what I do as a leadership developer. And I've seen it work in lots of different contexts over the last almost a quarter century of my career. It's also a place, there is a leadership model that's better than that one we've been conditioned to believe is right, where technologists thrive. I've seen technologists thrive. So these are two friends of mine, Aaron and Krista. Krista comes from Agile project development. Aaron was a software developer. These two people, I got to work with them at a software development company, and they're two of the most brilliant, most powerful, people-focused business leaders that I've ever encountered. And they come from a technical background. And I want you guys to hopefully see by the end of this presentation why that's the case. Okay. So I'm Steven. I'm a professor of business at SCAD. I also am a recovering corporate leader with a background in technology, and before that I have a background in consumer products. And I'm a technologist. I have an undergrad in chemical engineering. And well, who said that? Chemical engineer? Oh yeah, welcome, all right. There's an electrical engineer earlier, so it's not all developers today. So who's ever been told that technologists don't have what it takes to be good business leaders? Raise your hand if you've heard that. You can't be a good business leader as a technologist. And why? Why do people say we're not good? You said the same thing.
We're not good with people.
We're not good with people. We don't have people skills, right? We're too focused on the details. The other one I've heard is too focused on the technology. We don't know business maybe, right? And early in my career, my first job, I worked for Huggies Diapers, and my job was, I was a material scientist. My job was to design absorbent material that would hold more pee. That was my job. I worked in a lab. I didn't like it. I didn't like the smell of, even fake urine doesn't smell great in a lab. And so I decided at my first annual review, I went to my boss and I said, actually, I'm kind of interested in business leadership. Like, is this something I could get into? And she laughed at me. And she said, this company is run by marketers and salespeople. You don't know those things. You'd have to go back to school. And so I said, fine, I'll go back to school. Like, I was 23. That's cool. I'll just go get a marketing degree or something. And then she rolled her eyes and she said, this is what really hurt. She said, Steven, actually, you're kind of an awkward guy. Like you don't really have the ability to motivate people because you're kind of weird, dude. And this was another chemical engineering person telling me that. So this hurt. And honestly, it's not her fault either though, because she had a similar background. Like Kimberly Clark liked to hire chemies to be material scientists, and that was her background. She was about 20 years older than me, and about 20 years before, she had similar aspirations to get out of the urine business or whatever, and wanted to get into the business leadership side of things. Her boss had told her the same thing, right? So she had been conditioned also to believe that she didn't have the people skills. She was then passing that on to me. I told you that my grandpa was doing that in the 40s and 50s. It's interesting. Actually, we're being compared to an old model. We're being compared to a model that no longer works. And I want to show that to you. I want to show you why. Okay, I want to show you why it no longer works. And I want to show you that technologists, you actually have some skills that work really, really well with this new model. And that's both on the people side of things and the business side of things. And there are some huge advantages in this room to running businesses. So, what you've heard is BS. I want to show you why. I hope. And I'm open to challenge, by the way. If there are people in here who are not technologists and they want to argue, let's stir it up. That's fine. Maybe later, maybe not during the presentation, but. The job of being a leader the job description. So if you were to see like a Google Doc job description, let's list the jobs of a leader, it hasn't changed that much in the last 40 years. I'm just going to go back 40 years. So my boss told me I'm a bad leader 20 years ago. Her boss told her she's a bad leader 20 years before that. Let's just look at the last 40 years. And a leader has to have people. There are jobs related to leading people, and there are jobs related to leading a business, right? And people jobs are things like motivation. I've got to influence people to do something. I've got to find a way to motivate them to do a job, to move in a direction, to make a change, whatever it is. I've got to manage relationships with the people that I lead, however that looks, in the past and today. And I've got to build teams. I've got to be able to deal with teams of people. I'm not just leading one individual most of the time. Maybe I've got a team of folks. And then on the business side of things, 3 examples of business jobs. I've got to understand, build, execute strategy. I have to grow my business with marketing and sales. And I have to understand the economics of my business. And the purpose of economics in this context is I need to be able to look at the economics, a snapshot of the numbers to see how healthy my business is today. But more importantly, I need to understand how healthy it's going to be in the future and in the long term. Okay? So I want to understand through some sort of modeling, and can I project into the future to see if my business is going to continue to be successful if it is today? So these jobs haven't changed much, but what's changed is actually the skills required to do them successfully. So I want to compare with the old model and the new model across these terms for you. So let's look at the old model of leadership. This is when my boss, and this was in 2001 when I heard this message. My boss said, "You're kind of an awkward guy. You can't really motivate people." What she was telling me is, "Stephen, you're not charismatic, right? You're not a charismatic man, and therefore nobody's going to listen." And that was what leaders depended on, right? I'm a charismatic leader. My job is just to fire people up, and they will trust that I know what to do based on my personality, right? Based on the way that I can command a room, and that's what I'm hanging my hat on. And that actually worked okay, because the relationships between leaders and the people they led was dictated by a strict hierarchy. I lead, as a leader, subordinates, and we use that term. Subordinates, to me, they're beneath me. You don't really have a choice. You're expected to keep your head down and work. And teams, we're just a group of those people. 40 years ago, the concept of team as we think about it today and as hopefully, like, especially like I've been inspired by agile development with my experience, the way that teams have evolved in the last, well, in my career, 24 years. 40 years ago, it was really just a group of people who were doing individual tasks more often than not. That varied by industry, but their job was to keep their heads down and work. And team management for leaders was all about delegation of tasks, making sure that nobody ruined it for everybody else. They just kept their heads down and worked, okay? And this worked okay, because 40 years ago, business was pretty simple. It was pretty simple. It was easy to understand for leaders. And I actually forgot to get my prop out. I want to illustrate the shift in the business environment with my favorite illustration product, coming from consumer products, is Campbell's tomato soup. So Campbell's tomato soup, this product's been around since 1897. 1 year later, this label was designed. So that's a long time, 1898. It hasn't changed that much. And it was launched. It was actually innovative at the time. So it didn't change that much over 80 years. The business of Campbell's soup didn't change that much from the 1890s to the 1980s. What was happening was pretty simple. They had one strategy. They designed this to be, it's condensed, right? So it's canned, so it's got a long shelf life. And it can be shipped all over the country to mom and pop stores in all the cities. And they could get broad distribution with the innovation of canned soup, right? And it's cheap to ship because it's condensed. People add their water, so they're not shipping water around the country. So it's pretty cool. But that's the strategy. They're competing against other soup manufacturers. Pretty simple to understand. Pretty simple strategy. And their growth model was repeatable. They understood it. Leaders could understand the growth model. They actually did innovate in print ads and in radio and then later TV advertisements, especially like during the Great Depression is when their big radio push came out, and they became known for a comforting presence in the United States as something that was helping people get through the Depression, actually, with their product and their jingles associated with comfort. But it was repeatable and well understood. Like, they had advertising blitzes, and they dominated the airwaves, and then they had salespeople that was creating demand for customers, and they had salespeople on the ground selling to mom and pop stores. And that happened for 80 years. That was the model. Didn't change much. Maybe some variations here and there, but it happened for 80 years. And what that meant was the economics to decide if my business is successful today and if it's going to be in the future were pretty simple. Like, it was repeatable. I could look to the past, doing that for decades, and as a leader, and I could tell you what was going to happen in the future, which meant I could tell people on Wall Street, my earnings are going to be between here, and I would hit the uprights every time, and investment would roll in. It worked, right? So it's pretty easy. A simple business model, predictable growth, easy economics to understand. And then things completely changed since the early 1980s. Not just for the Campbell's soup business, but for every business. And those changes have not just impacted existing business, they've created new ones. And I've already heard some examples of new businesses in this room that have been created because of that revolution, right? The digital revolution is really what it is. So I want to illustrate what's changed with Campbell's. Strategy. So Campbell's no longer has one strategy. If you think about their product portfolio, it's expanded, right? Why? Consumer tastes have changed. Nobody just wants this anymore. They want stuff in their soup other than red liquid, and they don't want it condensed. I don't want to add my own water. That's a lot of work, right? Like, I don't want to do that. I want like ready-made soup with other stuff in it. And this has a lot of sodium, maybe I want something healthy. And also, like, I don't just use this to pair with my grilled cheese and eat. I'm also using this as a recipe. And so Campbell's, as this is a recipe ingredient, they've had to learn how to manage an ecosystem of partners, of other food products who sometimes are competitors, as an ingredient with you know, complementary tastes in other products, which is interesting. Also, in terms of strategy, they've gone global, and the digital revolution, flattening communications and understanding around the world has caused a lot of products like this to go global. It's sold all over the world, but you know what varies around the world is taste, like consumer taste. And so the product varies everywhere they sell it. They're not just in the United States serving, you know, economically disadvantaged families in this country. There's a diversity of global demand around this, which has caused their portfolio of products to just explode. So they're more complex. And all those changes are constantly changing. They're hitting a moving target with customer demand, and they're changing faster than ever. And that's not just Campbell's, that's every product that's out there, right? So let's think about growth. What's changed around growth? So over, 80 years, we went from print ads to radio to TV. And then in the last 40, we went from banner ads to search to social media to influencer marketing to, and that acceleration of change for channel the change is accelerating, and the way that marketing and sales works. Meanwhile, mom and pop shops consolidated into big regional and national grocery chains. Big box stores entered the fray. Dollar stores entered the fray. This thing called e-commerce started, and then it itself consolidated, so that the competition for eyeballs and dollars of consumers has just blown up and become fierce as a result. And that's also dynamic. That channel of where growth happens is also changing all the time, right? And so what that means is the models, I can no longer look, it's always changing. I can no longer look to the past to see if I'm going to be successful in the future. I have some very complex models that predict whether or not I'm going to be successful in the future. It's no longer about modeling and projecting based on the past. It's now about real-time learning of complex systems that are constantly changing with lots of interdependencies among ecosystem players, where most companies don't have the power they once had. So very, very complex. So the charismatic leader who motivates based on personality, it worked. He probably knew it was going to happen because it wasn't that hard. And I say he because back then it was men. But that you can't get away with that anymore. You can't do it. You have to understand your business at a deeper level. And it's impossible for any one leader to have all the answers anyway. And so if you get nothing from me other than that point today, I want you to hear that. Leaders cannot have all of the answers to the business, nor should they expect to, right? Nor should they be expected to. So where do they go for answers? And this is where the people side of things comes in. They go to their teams, right? So teams have changed from it's just a group of people that I've delegated tasks to, and they better keep their heads down, and I'm gonna just, expect them to do that so they don't screw it up for everybody else. Teams are now a source of partnership for running the business, for making decisions, for problem solving in a way that we've never seen. That dependency of leaders on their teams is increasing too. because of the increasing complexity. The ideal situation here is now a group of individuals who this is why diversity matters on teams. I want people coming from different angles based on different lived experiences and challenging one another in healthy debate. The problem with that is, if we're having debate, there's risk. There's individual risk for people. We're asking a lot of them. And so we're looking to leaders not to, just dictate how people behave. We're looking for them to create healthy environments where people feel safe so they can fully participate as partners in running the business. Man, I've seen some software development teams do that, but I'll get to that later. So what about individual relationships? I mentioned that we're expecting people to participate at a higher level. Well, that's flipped. That dependency of leaders on their teams has flipped the script in terms of the hierarchy. We are here as leaders to serve the people that we lead. And the relationship is one of mutual benefit. What I want to do as a leader is understand what the people on my team need and help them get there. What are their goals? What are their aspirations? There has to be some benefit beyond just a paycheck today for people to take the risk of stepping outside of the status quo and challenging the other people around their team. I have to be helping people grow and achieve their life goals if I'm going to expect that level of participation from them. Which means the charismatic leader has been supplanted by the empathetic leader. And empathy is necessary in leadership because there has to be a level of understanding of what motivates people beyond anything that we've seen in the past. If I want that level of participation and I'm going to help them achieve their life goals, I got to understand what motivates participation to individuals. I got to understand what their life goals are, and they're not going to just share that openly when I first meet them on day one. I've got to build a relationship, and that's the foundation of relationships. All right. One more trend. It's not on the screen. I'm a dad of 2 Gen Z kids, and maybe are there any Gen Zers in here? Challenge me if I misspeak. All right, please. If I'm right, clap for me. No, I don't need that. My kids. So a lot of people say you're impossible to lead. I don't know how to do it. I'm Gen X. I don't know how to do it. What I've learned is the people who don't know how to lead Gen Z are leading them the old way. They're not trying to understand them and help them find purpose, because Gen Z is my experience with my kids is Gen Z is the generation of purpose, the generation of why. There has to be a reason I'm doing this that matters. Otherwise, I'll go do something else. So, in my opinion and my experience also leading Gen Z people, this is also the way to manage the generational shift that we're seeing right now in the workplace. Is that fair? Yeah, okay. Generation Y, I'm seeking purpose. So for somebody my age that I'm leading, I might be helping them seek career growth from more of a business perspective. Gen Z's elevating that to purpose in life a little bit more than I would. And it's inspirational to me. Okay, so I'm babbling about soup and I'm babbling about changes and things that don't matter much to technology companies, but I want to close by saying what I said in the beginning. Technologists have some huge advantages in this new model, and we've already seen some of them today, which as I've been sitting back and listening to people, I've heard some examples of this. So the first one, businesses today the Campbell Soup looks more like a tech company today than a soup manufacturer from the 1980s. Like, they are participating in an ecosystem of digital sales and marketing. They're participating in Oh, in the fintech innovation, like nobody is handing cash to a cashier for this anymore, right? There's so many different ways. So they're more like that. They are a complex, ever-changing ecosystem player. That complexity, you guys got. Like, quite honestly, it's the level, I say the level of complexity is higher, but compared to what you guys deal with every day, it's nothing. It's a lot of complexity compared to, you know, the 1980s, but it's not, we don't need lambda calculus to describe it, which I'll get to that in a minute. You approach the world with curiosity. So organizations need to be learning organizations. You need to be able to admit as a leader that you don't know. You got to lead with curiosity and exploration, and solve problems with experimentation. You know how to do that. You're building a business leader builds an organization with those two capabilities built into it as part of their operating system. And you understand the power of that already. And not only that, you understand the power of elegance in solution, right? That's huge, and that's rare. And the level of math, like, when I was listening to the lambda calculus, like, that again, I've had the understanding of economic systems and marketing and sales funnels. There's math involved, and even financial statements. There's math involved that's nowhere near as complex as what you know, but your level of math will make you stand out and be so successful as a business leader compared to everybody else. You have no idea. And it's silly. It feels a little bit silly and obvious to say, but unless you've been there, you don't know. And hopefully some of you guys have been there. And the last thing I'll say, this is getting back to people. I think the curiosity is a little bit related to people skills and debunks that a little bit, but I think that my experience with technologists is there is empathy there. I think the idea that you don't have the people skills is frankly bull. And I've experienced it through the course of my career, my life. This is the key. You listen first. You have curiosity. You approach people with curiosity and systems with curiosity. You listen first and you speak later. That's the foundation for building empathy. And that's a foundation from building empathy that a lot of sales and marketing leaders, which I've been those too. So a lot of finance leaders would love to have, and you got it. So the next time you hear that you're not a good business leader because you don't have the business skills or the people skills, I urge you to flip the script. I want you to reflect on what you've heard from me today. I've given you 5 examples of potential strengths. You probably have superpowers that weren't on that list. Reflect on what those are. You've got an opportunity to stand out and be you. Don't be somebody else, okay? I would love for you to click this. This is feedback from this talk. If you got feedback for me, it's a good way to connect. Otherwise, we can connect on LinkedIn as well, and thank you.